I'll call this meeting to order December 15th, 2025 at 5:15. Roll call, Jessica Crosby.
Here.
Dale Johnson.
Here.
Tony Corpy.
Here.
Tina Sather.
Here.
Roxanne Skogsa-Deach.
Here.
Joanne Smith here. Beth Shimon.
Here.
Joe Sullivan, Max Yuso. All right, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion. I'll second.
Motion by Tina and second by Jess to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And we'll go to open forum, Elk Student of the Month for December.
I don't think we have them.
No? Nobody.
They're not here this
Oh.
month. They'll come in January.
All right. Skip that up. I don't think we have anybody for public open forum. Okay. We'll go to the audit presentation then.
So Becca, you're ready. They have the presentation also in front of them. If it's possible for you to share your screen if you'd like to, that would be great.
Oh, can't hear.
We can't hear you, Becca. You're on mute.
Okay, well, I'm working on sharing my screen quick. Okay, everybody, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Becca Nielsen. If you don't remember me from last year, I'm the manager on CLA's audit team, and I'm here to go over this year's audit results. So as auditors, our primary responsibility is to provide an opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. And whether or not we believe them to be free from material errors. We perform our audit on a risk-based audit approach, and
That was my bad.
risks such as your revenue or your cash. So this year we performed testing over internal controls to ensure that they were operating effectively. We selected a sample of disbursements and receipts to test. We confirmed cash accounts with bank and investors and set amounts with lenders. And then we also confirm amounts that are passed through the federal and state governments. So this year, we did not identify any unusual transactions. However, there was a new accounting standard that had to be implemented this year, and that was GASB Statement 101, compensated absences. So this was just a new change in the recognition of your vacation and sick liabilities and any other potential liabilities that the district has to pay out. So basically what this did was we had to calculate a more likely than not estimate of what the amount that the district would be paying out in the next year for like the actual sick leave taken. So this isn't going to increase your ending amount that gets actually paid out. It's just an estimate. So just wanted to let you guys know that because the balance did increase a bit this year. We actually had to retroactively apply the standard, and we restated beginning balances just due to the significant change that did happen this year. So as auditors, we also review management judgments and accounting estimates made to ensure that they were reasonable, and then all amounts in disclosures are adequate, clear, and complete. We review the information in the required supplementary information and the supplementary information of the financial statements to ensure that amounts tie back to the basic financial statements. However, we do not issue an opinion on the required supplementary information. We had no disagreements with management, and no major issues were discussed with management this year. We didn't have any outside consultation with other accountants. We did not run into any difficulties with performing the audit this year, and we And then this year we did identify a few uncorrected misstatements that we considered immaterial to the financial statements and that were not recorded, and that was just some changes with the receivable balances this year. And then the district passed on recording the subscription-based information technology arrangements. So that was a new accounting standard that was implemented about 2 years ago. And at the time, the balances were not determined to be material, so management passed on them and then have continued to pass on those adjustments in the future years. We did not have any corrected misstatements this year, so that means there were no material audit adjustments that were made. We issued a unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance that we can give as auditors. We did identify 2 material weaknesses, which are items we consider to be material in nature and necessary to be brought to the board's attention. So these are recurring findings from the prior year and not anything to be concerned of. They're very common in districts of your size. So this is your preparation of financial statements. Since CLA prepares the financial statements, there's always the risk that since we're not in the day-to-day activities, there are items that we could potentially miss when we're preparing the financial statements. And then there's also a lack of segregation of duties. Just due to the district size, it's not cost effective to necessarily hire the amount of staff that's actually needed to properly segregate those duties. And then this year, as part of the audit, we tested 2 major programs for your federal dollars since they were over $750,000 this year. The 2 programs we tested were the Child Nutrition Cluster and Title I. We did identify 2 findings related to these programs. They were both related to the Child Nutrition Program. So we found that the CLICS reports were not reviewed by somebody other than the preparer prior to them being submitted to the state. And then there was no formal documentation over the review of the suspension and debarment listing to make sure that vendors were not included on that listing. And then finally, we went through the Minnesota legal compliance questionnaires that the state issues every year. And then this year we did find 2 items we noted, and that was that the board did not approve of the safekeeping of the collateral, so what bank held that collateral, and then that the brokerage acknowledgement certifications were filed late, where the statute actually requires that either annually or before a transaction takes place with a new investor, a certification has to be obtained. Does anybody have any questions there? Okay, go ahead and move on. So this slide is showing the district's general fund. So in the current year, expenditures exceeded revenues by about $263,000. Revenues decreased from the prior year about $550,000. Federal dollars did decrease by about $1.4 million from the prior year. Most of the COVID-19 related aid was spent in fiscal year 24. So then that decrease in federal dollars was offset by an increase in state aid received this year. So there were some new funding sources received with the READ Act, and then the solar grant that was received from the state this year. And then in addition, your property tax revenue did increase this year too. Expenses increased from the prior year about $1.1 million. Most of this increase we saw came in with your regular instruction expenses and your special ed. And most of this was just due to the cost of living adjustments and benefit increases in the current year. And then in addition, we did note that capital outlay increased this year due to the roof replacement on the school bus garage, and then there were additional expenses related to that solar installation. Unassigned fund balance at year end decreased $687,000 from the prior year. So the state typically recommends 10 to 20% of the district's expenses be in both unassigned and assigned fund balance at year end. And currently the district is sitting at about 26% based on the state's calculation. So the district is following their recommendation and is well above what they would like to see. And then looking at your budget down at the bottom, both revenues and expenses were over budget. But I did note that the district budgeted a $965,000 loss for the fund, but the actual loss was actually sitting at about $235,000 at year end. And moving on to the food service fund. So in the current year, expenditures exceeded revenues by about $48,000. Revenues decreased in the current year by about $75,000. So there was a decrease in federal dollars as there were no supply chain assistance funding received this year. So that was some COVID-19 related payments. And then there was also a decrease in student meals this year. And then expenses also increased by about $10,000 from the prior year. So we did note that salaries and food costs did decrease in this fund. However, the district did purchase new ovens this year for about $54,000, which is why overall expenses did increase from the prior year. So overall revenues were under budget and expenditures were over budget, but fund balance was able to cover the loss for this year. For your community ed fund, in the current year, expenditures exceeded revenues by about $65,000. Revenues did decrease from the prior year by about $64,000. Property tax revenues decreased along with charges for service as your school readiness funds decreased. However, we did note that there was a slight increase in donations received this year. Expenditures also increased by about $14,000 from fiscal year 24. And this was again primarily due to your cost of living adjustment and your benefit increases. So overall at year end, you can see that revenues were under budget and expenditures were over budget. And then at year end, there is minimal fund balance left in the fund. So this is just something you'll want to continue to monitor because in the future, if you end up making a transfer to this fund, it needs to stay there. You can't take it back. So just kind of monitor and try to increase this fund balance if you're able to. And then your debt service fund and your capital projects fund. So debt service fund, these are your typical revenues. It's going to be some state aid flowing in and your property taxes make up most of those funds coming in this year. Your expenses follow with your debt payment schedule, and it tends to be pretty consistent year over year. Overall fund balance in the fund decreased by about $2,000. And then your capital projects fund was opened back up this year with the issuance of the new bond. So this year's expenditures you'll see were primarily related to those architects, your preliminary engineering type fees. And then you'll see that your bond proceeds actually flowed in down below in your other financing sources. So you don't see them in the top revenues. That tends to be just your interest earnings, but your bond proceeds will flow through down below here in your other financing sources. Is there a question?
No.
Okay. And this next slide is your revenues by source in the current year. So you can see state aid is by far the district's biggest source of revenue at about 63%, followed by taxes at 23%. So this did change a little bit just looking year to year. So last year, your federal did was a lot bigger due to that $1.4 million in your COVID aid that was received and spent. But otherwise, most of your categories tend to be pretty similar from year to year. Then this next slide is showing those revenues by source over the past 5 years. Get a good comparison year over year. So you can see that almost every category here has been trending up over the past 5 years, except for your federal. Again, the past 3 years, a lot of expenses and revenues have been hitting federal with the COVID dollars. So as those funds were spent, we can expect to see federal continue to decrease. And your taxes did increase slightly following the levy and will likely increase again in future years with the referendum. And then your state increased slightly this year with the new funding sources, and then such as your teachers comp redact and then the redact literacy aid, along with your increase in your solar grant. So similar to the revenue pie chart, this is a breakout of your expenditures in the current year by function. So regular instruction is typically the biggest portion of a district's expenses, and you can see that is true here at about 35%. However, this does look very different from last year's slideshow due to capital outlay. With those $2 million in your capital projects fund being spent this year, it significantly increased your capital outlay expenses here. And then overall, the rest of the categories did decrease this year, which you can see in a bit more detail here on this next slide. So this is a breakout over the past 5 years. So your categories such as regular instruction, district support services, special education, your sites and buildings, and capital outlay all increased this year, while the remaining categories decreased. So your regular instruction, your special education, your pupil support, we saw the biggest increases in. These are primarily driven by changes in salaries and benefits. As you can see, all of those did change this year with your cost of living adjustments. And then you'll see that your capital outlay spiked this year with those additional projects that were going on. And then moving on to this next slide is your average daily memberships. So comparing ADMs over the past 5 years, we broke out between your kindergarten students, your elementary, and your secondary students. And then we calculated a weighted average as your secondary students do receive more funding from the state. So you'll see the total for the weighted average down below in comparison to the prior year. So you can see that your secondary numbers did drop a bit this year. However, both of your younger students are moving up through the district, that those numbers have been increasing by quite a bit over the prior year. So overall, there was an increase in about 4 students in just your resident ADM counts, and then 2 students overall in your weighted ADMs. And then here's a good calculation we like to look at, which we call your enrollment gain or loss. So we take a look at the resident students that opted out of the district versus the non-resident students opting into the district, and then we kind of calculate whether or not there is a gain or loss. So at the end of fiscal year 25, there was a net loss of 213 students, with 234 resident students opting out of the district. So not a significant change if you look all the way back to 2021 versus 2025. And then this is a slide showing the expenditures by that weighted ADM number that I showed you in previous slides. So we compare your expenditures in total and then the expenditures in just the general fund. So you can see that in the general fund, the expenditures per student did increase in fiscal year 25. And then compared to all funds, it did increase significantly. So that again is primarily related to those capital project costs increasing this year. That's why that light blue color jumped up by quite a bit. So, and then with all the ongoing construction, we expect to see these expenses continue to trend upwards for all funds. And then this next slide is going to be your revenues per weighted average daily membership. So the total revenue per student this year did drop from about $17,000 to about $16.8 thousand in fiscal year 25. So your state and your levy aid did increase this, yes, it did increase this year, but you'll see a drop from fiscal year 24 to 25 as the fiscal year 24 amount did increase that significant federal aid for the COVID funding. And that was all I had for you today. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions? No? Thank you.
Becca, there are no questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you all for allowing us to serve you. We really enjoy working with the district, and thank you very much to CSO for all of your hard work helping us.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. We'll move to committee and administrative reports. Anything from student reps? Okay. Ms. Tate?
So we are going to start, but at 6 o'clock, we will take a break for the presentation.
Yes, make sure to tell me. Can you pull that PowerPoint up? Beth?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start with our enrollment numbers before we get into the PowerPoint on trimesters. Currently, we are at 428 in the high school, down 2 from last month. We were at 430 last month, and then we are at 31 in the ALC, and we were at 30 last month. So the total between the two of them, I believe we're at 459 between the two. Okay, and then I'm just gonna, for my presentation, I'm really just gonna probably talk about trimesters. I probably won't spend any more time talking about anything else because this is probably the biggest thing that we have going on, and this will take us through the end of the school year. We have a lot of behind the scenes work to do. And this is a PowerPoint presentation that I did for the staff maybe like 2 Wednesdays ago, I suppose now. And so we just did this to kind of get a feel for where staff were at and just kind of put everything out that we could for them to do a vote to see if they were in support. And the union did put out a vote, and they are overwhelmingly in support. So I'm going to just come over here so I can click this button. And I always struggle, and my staff always help me. So, okay, so we started talking about why we were looking at trimesters, and overwhelmingly the staff were not happy with the current schedule of when they teach 6 out of 7. And when they're teaching 6 out of 7, the staff are having anywhere from like 140 to 160 kids that semester. So that's a lot of kids to be coming in and out. That's a lot of families to have contact with. It's just a lot of things. And then they have one prep, of course, during that semester. So another concern that we're seeing is the majority of staff report concern with the number of open periods that juniors and seniors have. I understand why it was done, but it really has created some negative effects here at the high school. Like, we have kids kind of roaming, we have kids in classes when teachers are teaching, just spaces, and really we don't always know where everybody is at all given time. So it's something we need to look at. And then when we're talking to businesses too, and just talking about that, it's really not real world, so we're really not setting these kids up for what that looks like when they graduate, right? I mean, some jobs I think you'll be able to work 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day, but not all of them. So, and one of the biggest drivers for this is the lack of elective options for our students, and of course the student retention and recruitment goes along with that. And especially looking at PSEO students, Currently, we have 31 juniors and seniors that are attending PSEO at Rain River. 15 juniors this year and 16 seniors. So we'll get into that in another slide here in a little bit more in depth. And then over 50% of the building staff expressed a need for an advisory period, and that's just where we can break up our students among each staff, and then those staff are kind of assigned to those students, and we might do something like an SEL lesson. We might have a day where we're just working on like, do you have all your work in, just like checking in with our kids, and just really getting to know those like 12 to 15 kids based on how many kids we have here and our staff. It would be advisory across the entire building at that time. And then staff have expressed concerns with inequity and self-assigned that we have here. I mean, because sometimes, one semester they're teaching 5 out of 7, but depending on who you are and what your self-assigned is, you might have kids in your room still during that self-assigned time because you're helping them and you don't want to shut your door because you're a teacher and you want to help those kids. And so some teachers are truly getting that extra 15-minute period and some teachers are not. So it's just really inequitable. So there's concerns with that. So if we went to trimesters, the proposed schedule would likely consist of 5 68-minute class periods with a 20-minute advisory period, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then 65-minute periods on Wednesday with no advisory. And if I click this link, it's going to bring us to our proposed schedule, but I will also send you a hard copy of this so you can just kind of see it in numbers. So for the sake of time, I'll skip clicking on that, and I don't want to get lost. So teachers would teach 4 classes each trimester. Each trimester would run for 12 weeks, and teachers would have 68 minutes of prep and 65 minutes on Wednesday throughout the year. So that would be consistent for all staff. We talked about concerns with the number of open periods. Moving to trimesters forces us actually to review and make adjustments to graduation requirements, which could lessen the amount of open periods for juniors and seniors. Our current plan would likely be to offer open periods only first and fifth hour for juniors and seniors. Trimester schedule allows for increased elective opportunities while maintaining our current FTE. Increased elective opportunities give students more opportunities to take more classes. And with our current schedule, with our current 7-period day, there are several students who have taken all the electives they're interested in by the time they're juniors and seniors, leaving them really with little reason to stay in the building. Because maybe if you're a fax person, by the time you're a junior, you've taken all the fax classes, maybe you're not into industrial tech or art, and so you don't have a lot of other options. So this allows us to offer lots of different electives. Talking about the PSEO. So currently, 31 juniors and seniors attend PSEO. On average, the revenue loss, I have 238,000 here, but when Beth and I talked, she said it's really more, probably closer to 250,000 or more. So by offering the trimesters, that will allow us to offer more college and school classes, and our partnership with LSC will allow us to offer an AA to students in-house. That may consist of classes with LSC. It may consist of a few classes still with BSU, possibly a few with Rainy River or nursing classes we have through Rainy River or Minnesota North. But we have enough staff that are credentialed to be able to offer college and school classes in all goal areas. And with the trimester schedule, we'll be able to offer those full opportunities to our kids. So they really shouldn't have to take any classes online. The only one I'm a little bit questioning is art, because currently we don't have somebody credentialed in art, but in that area it's fine arts and humanities, so we may actually be just fine with that. Otherwise, they do have the option to take that class online with LSC. And the only requirement through LSC in our partnership for the AA is that 15 of those credits come from LSC. And that can happen in-house, of course, with our partnership. So that's really exciting. And there's a lot of kids that I've already talked to that said if we did offer an AA here in-house, that they would stay for sure. Things considered, there's a pros and cons sheet. You guys have a copy of that. There's mock schedules on here. If I open them up, it just basically gives different sample elective opportunities. They aren't set in stone because we need to meet as departments and talk about what that looks like. And again, I'll send you a copy of this. This is just a comparison chart that we put in, and this was just showing them like Moose Lake has been doing this for a number of years. So it just looks at Moose Lake's MCA scores versus our MCA scores here at Falls High School. And you can see that a lot of years their scores are higher than our scores are. So we just kind of shared this to say that like, yep, this can be done, because it can be a little intimidating when you're thinking about losing some instructional time. Because we are gaining a little bit in some classes, but in some classes now we're offering a class 2 trimesters instead of all year long. And that allows us to free up some of our science teachers to teach electives and things like that. So next steps, where do we need to go? This was like the presentation to staff. So I was saying, like, do we need to talk to more Moose Lake teachers? Like, what more information do you need from us? Our next steps would obviously be Mrs. Shimon and the union will work on creating an MOU. I feel like I'm just like only looking at you. They'll create an MOU in order to put everything together in this proposal, what it needs to look like. And then in January, we'll create registration materials. We'll have, I'll have department meetings. We'll probably use some PDT funds to schedule those meetings so we can really have some good conversations about what electives we are going to offer. Because also when we schedule, we'll schedule like 2 years at a time, because we also will offer some of our classes, we'll alternate years that we offer classes to also increase variety for kids. And also that opens up our scheduling flexibility, because we aren't, kids aren't so locked into having to take one class. We can offer more sections of a particular class by scheduling in alternate years. We do that a lot over the social studies offerings. So we'll work with Stephanie W. from LSC to shore up our college and schools offerings, our credentials. We're looking at a few other options. We're really working hard to try to offer, LSC has a lot of certificates that they offer, and one of the certificates that we're looking at that, like I said before, we can do as a college and the schools, and we can also do it as a CTE class, which means we could get some reimbursement for the CTE portion, is like a mass media and production class, and Katie Hammers is actually credentialed to teach that through college and the schools, so that will be a certificate we can offer. I think it's like 27 college credits that you get from LSC, and those can tie into their AA credits as well, and so we can kind of hit a lot of birds with one stone, right? Another area we're looking at, we're trying really hard, we're running into a few credentialing roadblocks, but we're hoping we can overcome them, and that is like a wildland firefighting certificate. There is definitely a lot of interest in that, so that is a certificate that LSC offers. But I'm also looking at, can we just offer it as a CTE pathway, and what would we need to do to get the kids that final endorsement, if it's taking a test or what have you when you're done. LSC also offers like a certificate in like exercise science or health sciences that looks at dietary things and exercise. So maybe there might be some kids that are interested in that. So there's just some of those things that we're looking at where we can offer some unique opportunities that other area schools are not offering. And the trimester schedule just gives us more flexibility to be able to look at those opportunities. So January, February is when we really hope to have some student registration meetings and some parent registration meetings. We hope to have probably a couple of those, and probably one like on a Saturday where we could have folks come in, because we feel like it's a really big change. It's a really exciting change, but it's a really big change because kids' graduation requirements are going to change too, right? Like, it will be a phased-in change for graduation requirements, and the first full kids that would meet these graduation requirements would be our 9th graders next year. But everybody else would need a phased-in graduation requirement so that they meet the requirements. Let's see, and LSC will come back up for our registration night in the spring to help families with that. We're hoping for like a mid-February registration so that we could have the schedule be done by March, so that we can spend some time really developing that new curriculum for those new electives, because there is just going to be so many, and we want teachers to be planful, and we don't want them to have to spend all summer doing that, and we want to know what's happening too, so we can help them with that. So hopefully we can spend the spring kind of doing some of that. Some of our work here on explicit instruction we might back off for a little bit, just so we can spend some more time on getting the trimester schedule right and our electives right. Yeah, because the goal is to have all our courses, curriculum secured before leaving for summer break.
What about for registration though? Don't you have to have them ready for registration?
Not the curricular materials, but we'll have to know what classes we're offering. Yeah, and so we'll meet right away in January and kind of have those discussions, and then we'll create like a course guide and put that out to kids and families to register.
Okay, you're just talking about like the materials.
Yeah, I'm just talking about like what they're going to use to teach it. Yeah, like the college and the schools courses, they follow the college instructors and those syllabi. So those are the easy one. It's the electives that we might create, or any like CT pathways and different things like that. But that's our goal. Really, is to offer more career pathways, because that's really a lot of the direction that kids are moving, and the communities are moving. And, you know, to expand our work-based learning. We've had a few meetings with PCA to do some things there, and just the college and the school. So really focusing on those efforts. What other questions do you have for me about trimesters?
You got a lot going on there.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah,
really
I mean,
good.
I think it's a really exciting opportunity to offer more classes for our kids, and I think that they'll stay. And I really think that really working hard on those kids that are going PSEO is probably where we want to focus our time and energy to get them to want to stay here. And so some of that is also offering more activities here within the high school, right? Because it's also about the culture and climate of the high school. You can have all the wonderful classes in the world, and then if the culture and climate is different. So we're working on all of those things together. But I feel like the union is excited about the changes, and I feel like the kids that I have talked to already about some of the changes, they're excited about it. So I think it presents a good opportunity for us.
And Principal Tate, could you just tell them a little bit about your team? It was not just you that explored this, but you did have a collective team to do some of the research behind this.
Yeah, we met a lot with a guy, Mark. Why can't I think of his last name right now? Probably because I feel Westerberg. So we did a lot with him, myself and some other staff members. We met with him, and then the leadership team will probably do a lot of the behind-the-scenes work about looking at policies, looking at graduation requirements, doing that phased-in process, and then we'll work with the teams to kind of develop collectively what we're going to offer. The one thing, and I said this before, is like it will take a commitment from the board to commit to probably smaller class sizes, especially in the AA as we start going. But that's why we're really trying to maintain just the FTE that we have now, so we don't need to increase that FTE, and we can offer those extra electives and classes. We just need to know and commit that some of those will be smaller as we build the future forward, right? And I think that the more and more kids that do get their AA here and are successful doing that here, the more will stay. And I think it's really attractive for parents, because we can still communicate with parents, whereas when they go across the field, they can't communicate with them, and so it makes things tricky. So I think those are some positives, and the other positives, like we said, when they're college and schools, they can dip back into the high school if they can't maintain that that load, or that increased workload. So yeah, I think it is really an exciting time to be part of Falls High School, really.
What is exactly our partnership with LSC, like how does that work? And
So there's not really it's not like a contract or anything, but basically what that looks like is we take the goal areas that you need to satisfy the requirements of an AA. It's 60 credits, and there's like 7 or 9 different goal areas that kids have to satisfy. So we would take our teachers that are credentialed, and we would offer classes in each of the goal areas to be able to help kids satisfy that so they can get an AA. The other thing they could look at is just the Minnesota transfer curriculum, which is like 40 credits versus the 60. And so that might be an opportunity for kids too, because not everybody's worried about getting an AA, but there are a lot of folks that really feel like they want to have that in their pocket when they leave. So it's really just, we're working with them. Once we teach the classes with them, then we have contracts with them, and we pay them, of course, for the course. Like our instructors work with their instructors, and we use their syllabi and their materials.
Okay, that's what I was like, well, there's gotta be some connection.
Yep, we work with them as far as like we're working with their staff and we're offering the class that they're offering. And we can offer, once we're working with LSC, we can offer any class that they have in their catalog, even if they're not offering it that semester at their school at the same time. And our trimesters will still work with college and the schools as far as we can still offer that flexible college schedule because we still will have plenty of credit hours with our increased class time. And we will still do things with explicit instruction. I mean, that is very important and that will help us as we transition to longer class periods. It just may not be the sole focus as we're moving to our next steps, because this is, I think, pretty important.
So the cost of providing the class that, you know, the fee that we're giving to LSC is not outweighing
It's minimal.
Oh, okay. Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
That's very exciting.
Any other questions?
I have it just on your second handout that you have. Are pages 2 and 3 supposed to have something on them, or is there blank?
No, it's probably just what was a bigger document. Well, I guess she has a page 1 and page 2 is this graph, the same graph. Do you have that?
Oh, I have 1 and 4, so maybe I just got extra pieces.
I
was like, I just want to make sure I'm not missing information. Oh, there's 3. Okay.
There's where our extra papers going.
No, this is exciting. I love that. I mean, you guys really dove into it and got some great information.
It's super exciting, and I think like it's good not to wait, because when we wait, we're just allowing more kids to choose another option. And I just think that we owe our kids to give them more flexibilities and more options. It's hard. It's really hard when you're sitting in that seat to schedule kids, and you say like, well, I'm sorry, I don't have any. This elective or this elective, and it's like the kids are not interested at all. So it would be nice to have different options for kids.
Well, and I would really like to see these kids not having so many open hours.
Yep, and I think this will help to change that, and it also helps to really give like 12 weeks, and then you're off to something new and fresh. So I think that will help too, because sometimes like you get in a class that you just really don't like, and so not having to have it for a whole semester. A semester's a long time.
Yep.
And it might help them find their passion in life too, as they're trying to, I mean, there's so many of them that are so overwhelmed with graduation because they don't know what they want to do yet. So.
Right. And taking 5 classes versus 7 is a lighter load for kids too, to kind of manage too. And I think that helps some of our diverse learners too, who don't have as many classes to manage each semester. So.
For sure.
So have you heard anything on like a negative impact? Because on the kids not having all those open hours, do you think we'll lose any kids that do want to go to the college because they want those open hours?
Well, funny you should ask that, because the kids that have open hours, they're like here. So I'm not really sure, but it does sound like some of them are at the college are actually taking more classes and more credits than we're taking here, because they have to, because they want that AA, right? So, and I think like we are still saying, like we'll still offer some open hours to juniors and seniors, but let's not make it so you're only taking 2 classes.
I was going to say
right?
there'll be 4 open hours.
Right, and so really with 5 classes, even if we did first hour and 5th hour for juniors and seniors, that kind of helps to think about the kids who have a hard time getting here at 8. And then for those kids that are leaving for athletics and things like that in the afternoon, or even employment, having that open hour, 5th hour. So trying to be planful. Will that work perfectly? I don't know. This is my first go at building a schedule.
Right.
So we'll see. I mean, ideally in my head, that's how it should look. But sometimes, yeah, it makes sense. But some things make sense in our head. And then when we get it on paper, it's like, well, that won't work.
Amen.
But it'll
Scheduling
take
is a
time too, I would assume, too.
Yes, it will take.
You gotta
some
allow
time.
yourself some mistakes too, I think.
Right.
Well, and you
Yes,
don't know if you don't
everybody.
try it. So.
Right.
I have one more question. How will this impact the kids that are in special ed? Like, they don't need that extra time in special ed versus getting a credit. So how is that going to be adjusted for them?
What do you mean, like extra time?
Kids, because now they'll be taking 5 classes a day. Well, if one of them is special ed, do they really need all that extra time in special ed when their other classes are cut? So how will
You
they be
mean like
accommodated?
the longer period, like the
Yes.
68 minutes?
Yep.
I'm not sure yet. I guess we're still gonna be having more meetings to decide what that looks like, and it will be it's gonna be really individualized. Probably some of our special ed teachers will teach some core classes as well, like they kind of moved to this year, where they're teaching some core reading and math classes. One of the special ed teachers talked about sharing that load amongst themselves, but it really will be individualized. Some kids will need that whole period and some kids will not. Some kids maybe will have it, all year. They might need that extra support. Some kids might just need a trimester of extra support. I think it just will be really individualized like it is now.
Okay, so how would it accommodate though, like a kid who has, like if they go to special ed every day, but now 2 classes are cut from them during that day and extra time is added to special ed? I guess I don't see how that would benefit them. It might negative impact them.
So I don't know if it would necessarily will be extra time added to special ed. Again, I think it would be like looking at everybody's needs. So like if you're maybe going to special ed and you're just like checking in with that teacher, that might look a lot different than a kid who really is, say, reading 3 grade levels behind their peers or something. That they would probably need more time, but a kid that's maybe just checking in or coming out to take a test, they might just come out to take a test and like go back to their class.
So they wouldn't be scheduled, though, what I'm saying, because a lot of kids are scheduled that full hour or
Yeah.
that full period right now.
Yeah. So, well, all of our classes would be 68 minutes. So while that is a little bit longer than they have now, it probably still will benefit them to just stay in that
And they're I
schedule.
don't know.
Because they wouldn't, like, that period, it's not like they would be coming out of 2 electives. So that period is still just that one elective that we're looking at, that one core class that we're looking
But
at.
it would have been 2 if we didn't change to trimester.
Right, but now, so because you get 5, like the kids have the opportunity to take 15 classes over the school year, whereas right now they have the opportunity to take 12. So they actually get to take 2 extra classes. So still, even if you took them on a 1 trimester and they needed it all year, or not 1 trimester, but 1 period, and they needed it all year long, that's still probably similar to what they're doing now. It's just a different
We're
format.
gonna have to cut you
Oh.
off.
We're good?
I got one more
6.
question, but that's okay.
Okay.
We'll
We
come
can
back.
to it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But Tina, I'll bring your question up for when we get together and we'll
Okay.
look deeper at that.
All right, we're gonna move into TNT.
Are you there, Jason?
I am here.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, school board. Thank you for having me. My name is Jason Mutzenberger. I'm your business manager with CISO. I'm here to present your truth and taxation hearing this evening. Tonight is a public hearing for taxes payable in calendar year 2026, which will help fund the district for fiscal year 2027. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along here. There are a couple of specific requirements within state law that we need to comply with. The first is that we have to hold a public meeting between November 24th and December 30th, which we're doing this evening. It needs to be at 6 p.m. or later, so thanks for scheduling me here at 6 o'clock. It can certainly be part of this regularly scheduled meeting. In the past, we used to have a separate hearing, but now we can have it part of the regular meeting. We do allow for public comments right after the presentation. If there are any community members present that would like to speak about their taxes, this is their opportunity to do so. And then we may adopt the final levy later in the evening, which is on the agenda for tonight. During the presentation, we are required to talk about our current year budget and the proposed property tax levy. And so we'll cover those 2 items as we go forward. So just the agenda for tonight, we'll cover some background information on school funding. We'll talk through the district's budget for the current year. We'll discuss the proposed tax levy for next year and then take those public comments. I think the best place for us to start is really to talk about our general education formula allowance. This is our main source of funding within the school district, and this is really what drives our operating fund, our general fund. And we know that over the years, it just has not kept pace with inflation. And so this chart shows us what our current funding is in that orange dotted line versus the darker solid line, which is where our funding would be had it kept pace with inflation. And you see the gap continue to widen on the far right side of that chart. And really what that looks like, that even despite in fiscal year 25 an increase of 2% to that formula allowance, we continue to see the gap widen. In fiscal year 26, our current year, we have 2.74% increase. The gap continues to widen. And so what does that amount look like? Currently, the per pupil allowance for fiscal 26 is about $7,500 per student. But we would increase by another $1,400 or 19% in order to bridge that gap. And so the resulting need is that we have to put a tax levy in place in order to cover that gap. And so before we get to the tax levy, we'll talk about our budget information. The school district has a number of funds that we track. Our main funds are the general fund, the food service, community, our debt service fund, and a custodial fund. We do present just current year budget information for fiscal year 26, as we're still in the middle of that fiscal year. Unlike the city, as they're looking to adopt their calendar year 26 budget, since our fiscal year runs on the July 1 to June 30th fiscal year, we are still reporting our 25-26 year. We'll bring budget information to the board for final approval in June of 26. Or you'll see a number of things along the way as we talk through financial projections and start to look at budget parameters here starting in the new year. Our 2025-26 budget for general fund revenues, our main operating account, totals about $14.8 million. The majority of that comes through the state funding. You heard that in the audit presentation already, but most of our funding comes through the state, about $11.3 million. Our federal revenue for the current year is expected to be about $600,000. So that number continues to drop from that $2.5–3 million that it was during COVID. That continues to come down. Taxes do account for a significant percentage, about $2.5 million of our total budget. And then we've got a small bucket of some other miscellaneous revenue, which includes some of those local fees, interest revenue, those kinds of miscellaneous items. Our general fund budget accounts for about $14.9 million for the current year. So we're looking at deficit spend slightly in this year. I believe it's about $85,000. So close to a balanced budget, but a slight deficit spend. Most of our spending comes with our employee costs. 74% of our budget, or about $11 million, goes to pay our employees. That's the nature of our business, of course. In educating students, we need our staff to do that, and they do a wonderful job. We do have a category of purchase services of about $2.2 million. Supplies and materials are about $1 million, and we do have some capital and other expenses as well. Why we're really here tonight is to talk about the tax levy. So again, this is our payable 2026, meaning that taxpayers within your community are paying their taxes based on this these numbers presented by the school tonight for calendar 2026. So we'll talk through how we determine the levy. We'll compare to last year, talk about a few of the reasons for some of the changes, and continue forward with the meeting from there. School district property taxes within Minnesota, each district within the state levies about 40 different categories, and this is largely governed by the state. They determine what our amounts are in large part based on our enrollment in many of those categories. It's all very state driven. We do have some voter approval amounts within the levy as well. There is a property tax process that we'll walk through here in the next slides just to lay this out a little bit clearer. But any of the steps within the process can affect the taxes on each property. The district has control over just one of these 6 steps that we're going to talk through. I've got actually 5 of them laid out here in our steps of timeline. This identifies our timeline, which we started back in September. I was with you, board, on the, I believe the 15th to talk about the proposed levy amounts. We received the first levy round not until about September 11th, just before that board meeting. In mid-November, the county then mailed out the proposed property tax statements. We're here tonight on December 15th for the public hearing. And then following the hearing, we'll request that the board certify those final levy amounts. At that point, we then submit final information to the Minnesota Department of Education and to the county. And then those get rolled into the final tax bills for our community to make those payments right away in 2026. So here's the overview of the proposed tax levy. And high level, we're proposing an increase in our tax levy from last year of 2.55% or $112,000. We're going to talk through some of those changes here as we move forward. I did include the majority of the categories within the document. I'm not going to walk through all these, but they are available here for you, board, and the public to take a look at. Just to explain a few of the levy changes. The first one I want to talk through is with the general fund, long-term facility maintenance. We are seeing an increase of about $187,000, $188,000 within the category. Long-term facilities maintenance, or LTFM as we call it, pays for those deferred facility maintenance costs along with health and safety program costs. We do receive revenue through a number of property tax levies and state aid. And then board, you approve a 10-year long-term facility maintenance plan each year, typically in that June or July timeframe. That really lays out what our plan is for maintenance and health and safety. We are seeing an increase in this category with just how we've structured the payments and the revenue in combination with the referendum. And then most recently, we did ask the board with Ellers to approve some additional funding to support those projects at no tax impact cost to our community. That all gets rolled into our tax levy, and we see an increase on this line item within the levy. There are a number of factors that impact school taxes, and not all of them will impact every tax bill the same way, but certainly changes in the value of an individual property can have a significant impact in somebody's taxes. Changes in the total value of all property within the district also has an impact. If I take a look at the sheet, it looks like our market value within our community is pretty flat at just over $1 billion. That's up about $3 million over the prior year. So it's pretty flat. And so that line item is not impacting taxpayers this year. Other items that can increase or decrease the levy amounts would be our individual voter group levies, which can be impacted by those referendums or other factors. Again, those 40 categories, most of them are based on enrollment. And in the district, we're seeing declining enrollment. And so taxes are pushed downwards because of that, but we also see some increases in other areas that are state driven. And so the combination of that for us is getting us to about a 2.55% increase. We always like to share if taxpayers are receiving a significant increase on their statements, there are some options for them. There's a home credit refund which they can go and file for and receive potentially a refund back. There's a special tax, property tax refund, and then a senior citizen property tax deferral. I've got some basic information included here. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer those offline with taxpayers, or they can go to the county website, and they have some great information out on that website as well. And next steps, we're asking the board to take any public comment if there's any in the room tonight, and you're welcome to address some questions or just take the comment, and then later this evening that the board would certify the property tax levy. And so at this time, I would turn it back to the board chair to go ahead and ask for any public comment.
Sure. Does anyone here have any comments or questions? No? All right, none.
Can I ask a question, Jason?
Yes, please do.
Okay, the levy change that we're proposing is for the long-term facilities maintenance, for deferred facility maintenance and health and safety program costs. some of that due to the requirements that the Department of Education and the Minnesota Building Code has implemented on us? I mean, in terms of the sprinklers and that kind of stuff that we've had to do?
Potentially, I would say it's not directly related. In working with Nexus and the projects that are underway with the referendum, we've certainly seen some increased costs because of those items. Those are already, I should say the amounts are already factored into the levy and predetermined that way. And so those costs, now we just have to figure out how we're going to cover those additional costs.
That's what I'm saying, though, the cost,
it's used,
the money was there for other deferred maintenance, and we've had to reallocate it because of state requirements in terms of like the sprinkler system.
correct.
I just
think
wanted
that's
to
a
be
great
clear
way
with
to put it.
people.
We're reallocating the funds that we had there in order to cover these additional costs.
Right, I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible with the public that it's not because we're spending more money, we're not overspending what we asked for on the referendum. There have been requirements that have come from the Minnesota Department of Education and the state of Minnesota that have required us to do things with our facilities. The sprinkler systems being one, we've had to sprinkler buildings that were built in the 60s to the tune of about $600,000 to $700,000 that we were not anticipating. So I just want people to be aware of that fact, and that, because I know that we don't have a huge appetite here for tax increases at this time. There's already been quite a few from the county perspective. And so I want people to be real clear that this is not the referendum that's causing this. And I'm not trying to shift blame or say that we're, perfect at managing everything, but there have been a lot of requirements from the state in the last year that we've had to accommodate.
And they were new requirements.
Yes,
things that
brand
we
new
had
requirements.
No idea
Right.
were coming.
Nothing that we could have planned for.
They came with no funding.
Then came with no
Yeah.
funding. Yes. So I just want to be crystal clear with everybody that that's why there's an increase.
I would add to that the referendum increase was last year. That is not affecting taxes that we're presenting tonight. That'll come into play for calendar 26. That was already in place for last year when the voters approved it last fall. It was accounted for within that levy. It essentially resets our base now in our tax levy, but we're not seeing the increase because of the referendum at this point.
Excellent.
The other thing that I would mention too, I noticed I skipped by one slide. The other increase that we're seeing is with the Career Tech Education Program. We have increased eligible expenses within that program, which is great. We heard tonight that we're providing some additional opportunities for students. We're able to capture some of those dollars back through the levy for that program. And so that's the other reason, or the major change within the levy. Those two amounts, Career Tech and the LTFM, are really driving the increase in the levy. I believe we've still met the obligations that we laid out within the referendum of tax impact, now that we're 2 years past, in the sense. And so I believe we're still holding to our commitments there. And I feel like the 2.55%, while it's largely driven by state law and enrollment, the board has little ability to move that number up or down without voter impact. So I think we have a good number that's coming forward for approval tonight.
Right. And I know that, I also want to mention, and you guys tell me if I'm talking too much, but I also wanted to mention that we did have an opportunity at a point in time with our referendum funds, because of the increased demand from the state and Minnesota Department of Education, to increase without going back to the taxpayers, but increasing the taxable amount, and this board said absolutely not. So I just want that to be crystal clear.
Well, that's what I have for you tonight. Hearing no public comment, board, you can continue on with your agenda, and then later on get back to approving the levy at the end is just fine. Or you can continue to take care of that now. It's up to you. But I'm happy to take any additional questions. Otherwise, that's all I have for Truth and Taxation this evening.
No? Thanks, Jason.
Yes, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
All right. if everybody's okay, can we go ahead and approve the 25, pay 26, fiscal year 27 levy in the amount of $4,520,629.15. Is there a motion?
Rox will make that. I'll second.
Motion by Rox and second by Dale. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. And then we'll go back to our reports. Jessica, you had a...
Can I ask one more
Yes.
question? Okay, Missy, I just have one more question. I saw you had, in the trimester schedule, you had specifically said Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday would be the 68 minutes and Wednesday would be the 65. Is this a point in time where we could look at maybe doing away with the early out Wednesday?
Yes, please.
I mean, that's probably another board discussion. We haven't really discussed that much. I mean.
Seems like if we're making changes to the
Yes.
schedule, now would be the time.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's obviously something that can always be visited. The only thing I would caution is that then we continue to find the time that we can meet with staff or have that staff development time, because that is, otherwise we have no time to meet with staff during the school week, or, so.
And that is also tied to contracts, so it is a conversation that we would have to have
Okay.
to look at alternatives for the professional development.
Or maybe go to once a
component.
month,
Yep, so,
every Wednesday.
So there'll be time for you all to discuss before that comes before the board.
I would have to sit down with Principal Tate, sit down with the board, and then sit down with the teacher.
Because really, didn't early out Wednesday come from the whole QComp? That was their time to meet.
No, it actually came from a need for staff development time and a need to have time to meet with our buildings, because prior to early outs, like say contract time was leaving at 3:50, right? Well, at the elementary building, for example, that's where my experience was. We weren't done with buses until even like 3:30, right? So that by the time you get to have a staff meeting, you have like 20 minutes, and while some people will stay, not everybody will. And then, of course, just as we start doing some of these new learning tasks and these new initiatives, like even the READ Act, I mean, that time is valuable to come together and work on some of those things. Because there's a lot. I mean, it is a heavy lift every year in education, and so I think not having any time to visit that is a struggle, and it isn't good for kids, and it's not good for staff either. So while I am open to whatever that schedule needs to look at, we just need to make sure that we do include that staff development time, because it is important for us to come together as a staff, and it's important for them to have that time to work on those initiatives that we're saying, like, these are really important, even if we're just coming together to talk about trimesters and how it's going. Or like at the elementary school, we might have just met and we might go over like one strategy to work on in the classroom and then go back and come back together. But even sometimes it is just the having uninterrupted time for a staff meeting, because sometimes we have things that we need to talk about that take more than 20 minutes. So,
What time did you do QComp then?
so before, it wasn't actually until a few years ago that QComp was included into the early out, and it was like just 30 minutes into the early out. So at the elementary school, we usually just met like 2:50 to 3:50, and that was our meeting time. Right now, it's like the first and third Wednesday they can count as part of their QComp time, or they get to, like, we meet for 30 minutes and then they go for the next 30 minutes and meet with their team, and then another 30 minutes. So they have an hour to meet with their team. And that was just recently, within a few years.
But was that on Wednesdays?
Yes.
So Wednesdays is part of the QComp.
It is now, but not originally when early.
Oh,
outs
that's
were-
right. Jessica's
that was her
question was it originated from.
It
That's
did.
what I
Yes.
thought,
It
yeah.
was not at all involved with QComp when it originated. It really was teacher direct or administrative directed.
But you won't need the time for QCOM going forward, right, with that going away?
If it goes
If it
away.
goes away?
Yeah, if it goes away, but again, it's not just about QCOM goals, it really is about staff development, it really is about like, maybe we're gonna work on a vocabulary strategy, and so you do need all the time to
And
come
it is
together.
aligned with our strategic plan and our district goals, but also what comes at us from the state. So for example, the READ Act, we had to invest that time. So it's an important conversation, and I think that we can have that.
Okay, I just think we should open the door since we're changing it. If you're changing the schedule anyways, now's the time, right?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I am 100% with getting rid of early out on Wednesday. All right, any other questions?
No, I'll shut it down.
No, you're good. All right, Ms. West?
Alrighty, I'll start with our enrollment. At Falls Elementary, we are +1. At West End Elementary, +1 for a total of +2, total of 504 students. Holiday festivities are in full swing. We had our holiday concerts on Friday, and many of our classroom holiday activities are underway. Thank you to our local television station, KCC, for recording our concerts, and we are working on getting our concerts on the radio as well. The Winter Wonderland contest is in full swing, and it's adding a lot of festive cheer throughout our school. Important upcoming dates as we look at January. We will be having class photos taken January 13th in our Falls Elementary Library, and we also have, surprisingly, the end of the semester is January 19th already, so it's just flying by. I forgot to mention that we have completed our midwinter math and reading screenings. That allows us to set our goals for January. So lots of things going on right now. I'm very excited about a grant collaboration happening. There is a DNR grant right now to encourage outdoor focused activities. Mrs. Zaradka and Ms. Erickson are collaborating with Linnea, our grant writer, and also with Molly, with our community ed department. And they are discussing some of these things for the grant, additional cross-country skis and snowshoes for our kids. A gaga ball pit, and if you don't know what gaga ball is, it is so fun. It is a version of dodgeball, and there's a pit. It's a raised pit, like an octagon, and the kids go in the pit, and then they play dodgeball, a version of it with softballs during recess, and it is so fun and so engaging.
By softball, you mean soft.
Soft, yeah, not softballs. And so it is so fun. And I have found it. I had it at my school in St. Louis County, and we actually had 2 gaga ball pits, and kids of all ages really enjoy them. So I'm super excited about that. They're working on a fishing in the schools program and curriculum. They're looking at getting skates for physical education classes. And then possibly a 5th grade field trip to Giants Ridge for some downhill skiing and snowshoeing. So I'm really excited about that.
That's really nice.
So our January activities also include skating at Bronco Arena and sledding at Bronco Hill during recess time. So we're getting that all organized. We will need skate tires to help support these activities, so I'll be putting the word out. So if you know anybody who'd like to come in and chat with the kids and tie some skates, we would love that. We are very fortunate that the United Way they are coming tomorrow with boots, coats, hats, mittens in all sizes, brand new, that they're donating for our kids, which we always need during this time of year. And also, our Lunch Buddies program is sponsored by the United Way. Currently, we have 4 students who have a mentor, a Lunch Buddy mentor. Once a month, they come and have lunch with their mentor. They're going to be having holiday lunch, and they've invited families in. If anyone is interested in being a Lunch Buddy mentor, just call the school. We'll get you connected with Sarah from the United Way. And
can you explain what that is?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes kids really just need one caring adult to connect with, someone to just visit and chat. It's very informal. And any of our Lunch Buddy volunteers, when they come in from the community, we have background checks, and we try to partner them with a student that they might really enjoy visiting with. And they just have lunch. They go into the library, student brings their lunch, and they chat. Sometimes they play a game. So it's just a really, really nice positive connection.
Wow.
Our Check and Connect program, I just wanted to highlight that right now because we'll be wrapping up a 2-year grant and applying for another 2-year grant cycle with that. Check and Connect program is out of the University of Minnesota, and it's a program to help just that, build connections, make relationships in school between students and a caring adult and home. It encourages improved attendance. They work on executive functioning skills like organization, and again, just building connections and relationships. With the grant, we have a Check and Connect mentor. Currently, it's Molly Shesby. She has a social work background, and she meets with students. She has 21 students on her caseload, and of all ages, K through 6. And really, regionally, the Check and Connect program has shown to provide a 46% decrease in behavioral issues, 47% decrease in absenteeism. And this is, it's a really powerful evidence-based program. We just have really strong results and we want to continue it, so we'll be reapplying for this grant funding. We hope to continue that program in our school. And again, their motto, interestingly enough, if you go to the University of Minnesota website, under Check and Connect, is one caring adult.
Good.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
How does the kid get connected into that group? Like, how do they find out about
That is
it?
a great question. It happens through our MTSS process. So every week, we have a group that meets. We call it our data team. It consists of myself, Mr. Glowak, our student support specialist, our social worker, our Check and Connect mentor, our Indian education mentor, we get together, we're representatives of all the different areas of support that students might need, and we discuss students. We have a referral form. For example, if a teacher has a concern about a student, they would just fill out the information and then we read it over, and we might reach out to that teacher and ask them questions, and then we might say, yeah, this seems like a really good fit for Check and Connect. So we really, make sure we know everything about that child. And then the Check and Connect mentor would make contact with home and then ask permission for that. And so it's a really nice process. Sometimes parents will reach out to us, they'll just call and they'll say, is there anybody at the school that my child can work with? My child is really struggling with organization or just needs someone to talk to. Then we will go ahead, I always say, we'll run it through our data team, we'll discuss it, and then we'll get back to you on that. So,
Okay.
great question. The last thing, professional learning. In January, we will continue our work on explicit instruction. We have some things planned for our January 19th in-service and also a couple of our early out Wednesdays. And again, our focus this year is vocabulary instruction and student engagement. And it's really, really important that we have really solid Tier 1 core instruction. Tier 1 just means everybody gets it in the classroom. We want to solidify and have the very best evidence-based strategies being used in the classroom. That's the foundation for student success. So we will just continue our important work in the new year. So, thank you.
Thanks.
That's everything. Thank you.
Thanks. Molly?
Okay, let's see. Mine's quite brief. Is the microphone on? Is it?
No.
No. Is that not a bad thing? Okay, I think it's on. It's
There
on.
it is.
Okay. So this is a community education update for early education. We have 65 students enrolled. So one family inquired recently about the program and is looking to fill that last 4-year-old seat. So we're pretty excited because then we'll have a full load. They're moving from Detroit Lakes. And then we are currently evaluating the program for next year with the preschool teachers, early childhood special ed teacher, the MARS coordinator, and then going through like feedback forms because I'm really trying to like make it a really transparent registration process because we ran into a little bit snafus with things this year, and I want to be more transparent to families going forward with this program. And then community education updates. We have a full class load, which I'm pretty excited about. So last week, Angela Scholler ran a rustic snowman class that had 9 people. We have snowmobile safety this weekend on Saturday, and that class is just about full. We have 1 spot remaining. And then driver's training in January, and then we reached out to some of the teachers. So Marcy Nemec's going to be teaching a chunky knit like blanket class, which is really exciting. So hopefully we'll get some takers. And then Cheryl Bachnuck is actually running a technology series class, so it's like Windows 11, Excel, Microsoft Word. There's just like a whole bunch of things that like people have reached out from the community, like the senior center, and they were like, hey, we're looking for assistance in this. So it was like a perfect fit. And then right now we have, well, I guess in January and February, we have Ski Sparks, which is like a cool opportunity for our young people. So it's like 4-year-olds through 13-year-olds, and it's a Nordic skiing class. It's run through the cities. Wow. They have like, I don't know, they have a whole bunch of like clubs that they sponsor, and they just send you home with like 12 rental skis, and then you just send them home with families. So it was like, okay,
nice.
Yeah, so that was really nice and a good connection. The people are really great. There's only like 3 people who work there, and they're like, hey Molly, we're trying to do this. And I was like, I'll help you out. And then we had Water Fitness wrap up last week, and that's by Jackie Lanier. She's really great. She does a lot of our swim lessons. She runs CPR classes, and then she does water fitness. And then we have Taekwondo, which is ongoing. And then we have defensive driving. We're trying to just get that scheduled with the instructor for January, February, because I get my phone calls saying, hey, we need this for a discount. So we're working on that. And then ongoing is like handbooks for programs. That's something that wasn't passed down to me. It was like, we had no handbooks, and it's hard to kind of back yourself up when you don't have any policies or procedures in place. So we're working on those. And then I just put out last week a class proposal online form for folks to fill out if they're interested in being an instructor. I think there's so many benefits to teaching in a community ed class that people aren't aware of. It's like if you have a hobby or something that you want to share with other people, you can make money too.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then last week we had our Community Education Advisory Council. This was just a small group of folks, but we're talking about updating our mission to be more aligned with the school district and the community as a whole. And then we talked about how to advertise for classes, because I do not like posting on Facebook only. It kind of bothers me a lot, so I'm trying to figure out flyer locations. And then Linnea Imhoff had like a good tool that she was like, for when she worked for the county, it flyering locations all around the district that I can kind of pop into. So that was really helpful. And then we're still seeking more members. I'm hopeful to get more preschool families. We had 1 preschool family attend, so that was really exciting. So I'm looking for more. So our next meeting is February 4th from 3:30 to 4:30 in the community education room. So that is my update. Any questions? Oh, you don't. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we knew that tonight was going to be a long one. So the first thing I want to talk a little bit about tonight is I want to give you a brief referendum update, and I think there might be some discussion in some of our committee updates, but we are seeing a lot of action throughout the district, and as we know, it's posing a lot of excitement, but it's also posing some barriers when we think about access to roads and we think about where we can drop students off. One of the things that continues to come up is just the trafficking patterns and how it can get really congested, the inability to go behind the school, and I just have to keep reminding people we have to think of safety first, and it is for 1 year only, and then we will reroute everything to ensure that there's clear access and maps of where people can be dropped off and picked up. One of the things that is really important is we do ask the community to please, it's an inconvenience, we know it, but to follow the traffic patterns that we've set up for Falls Elementary and Falls High School, because the areas are labeled for a reason to try and get people in and out as quickly as possible. And though we know our time is precious also, it just creates more barriers when people don't follow what we ask. So we're working with the International Falls Police Department, Building Administration, and our facilities coordinator on trying to strategize. And as winter occurs, we want to make sure that people are really being in tune to what's happening with our traffic. So we have a lot of electricians on site and workers throughout the district really putting in new ceiling tiles, putting in lights, the transition of lights. A lot of the work is happening when the school day is out and even throughout in the evening. One of the things that is going to start, the biggest area that's going to start now officially on Monday or right after Christmas, is Falls High School is going to start being demolished in certain aspects. So you're going to see big changes here. So when you look at where the cafeteria areas, where we're going to put in like a new school store, the booster area, the concessions area, the student lounge, the staff mailroom, all of that is going to be marked off, and the construction is going to begin. So where you have to pivot and create different spaces to put things. So Principal Tate is looking at how can we make an area, a space still, so our seniors have access to go somewhere. We're also looking at how are we going to operate concessions, so she's working with our facilities coordinator in addition to where we're going to have our staff mailroom. So we're really working on a lot of different things to lay out so we can still have ease of how the operations look within our building, but it's also a moment of excitement because it continues to mean we're moving forward to get that destination of the construction being completed. So the staff has been amazing to work with. Everybody is really understanding that they, some days are going to come in, the classrooms might be a little bit of a mess due to people working in the ceiling, and we know that we're going to have to pivot again as we get ready to come into the school year 2026, the new year, and know that Falls High School will be under construction. Again, after the hockey season and the figure skating season gets over, then there'll be major construction happening at Bronco Arena. We do have some barriers that we're running into. Again, we go back to what Member Crosby talked about with the state mandates. We have to remember that this has been really a 4 to 5 year process from incubation to completion with the referendum process. One of the things that has come up new under a new fire marshal is the firewall. Right now they want us to put a firewall into the Falls High School gym because it's a connector to one of the areas of construction. So the referendum committee, which is Member Johnson, Member Skoksad-Deach, Member Crosby, we have met. We had a very good meeting with MDE. We had Nexus there, we had our board there, and we came together and we came up with some creative solutions. And I think that goes back to what we're talking about tonight. When we look at our finances, we have so many unfunded mandates that are coming our way, in addition to the needs of our infrastructure are aging and they're deteriorating after all these years, that there are bills that are coming up that we weren't quite prepared for. And again, I'm going to use that word again, but we have to pivot and look at where can we do things differently. And so as we continue to assess our funds, we have to remember that so many unfunded mandates come our way that we have to look at things differently. In addition to, we may have to make some cuts to modify and stay in good standing financially. So if there's no questions on the referendum, that's kind of a brief update of where we're at today. The big thing I want to talk to you about tonight is our school district strategic plan. And I know that the district had done some comprehensive work on that. And then there was a little bit of a lag in what the strategic plan looked like. COVID happened and some of the other things with the new change of new leadership in the realm of the superintendent, building principals. So we started the process last year where we came back together and we reviewed the strategic plan for the school district. And what we really found is we needed to take a look at our biggest lagging indicators, like where do we need to revisit, one of them being enrollment. Student attendance is another area, in addition to aligning the variables that contribute to student outcomes. So when we look at performance of behavior, we look at student attendance, we look at academic achievement, we look at rigorous learning in the classroom, in addition to the offerings. That's what we're really talking about when we look at what is happening at the elementary level and what is happening at the secondary level. And though we're starting to see some positive trends at the elementary level where we're starting to bring back some of those students, we have to look at the middle school and secondary level a little bit different because, again, if we continue to do what we've always done, we're going to continue to get what we've always gotten. So that is an area that I felt we needed to revisit in looking at our data and how we look at the data as a school board, as a school district, and what we're conveying to the public. So I have met with TeamWorks outside of the committee that met in that strategic planning session last March. One of the things that
what the district does not have is they do not have a comprehensive performance dashboard. And that is something that we need to have to make good decisions based on student outcomes. So I have been working with a number of different consultants to start looking at how can we create that for our district so we can assess what's working and how can we measure what's working and what's not working at a macro level, that we can start looking at different areas historically, so we can start looking at data trends from 10 years ago to where we're going now, but it's all in one massive dashboard. In addition to, we can look at it for onboarding purposes, and in addition to, if I exit the job or a new teacher comes in or we have a change of principals, anything that happens, this data will always be there and used for the next person. So I'm working with a consultant to create a dashboard, and this is something that we're going to be investing in to look at, to roll the dashboard out on January 19th. And what'll be in there will be the historical data on attendance, academic performance, in addition to historically what the district has looked like when we talk about breakdowning subgroups. And when we talk about subgroups, all that means is, what does performance look like for students who receive special education services? What do performances look like in math and reading and science based on race? So we're really getting a really comprehensive snapshot of how our students are performing in different areas. So in addition to that, it'll provide an ongoing longevity to measure the details of student outcomes, but it'll also be able to break it down in short-term goals and long-term goals, in addition to recognizing areas that are just not working for the district. Part of the dashboard, in the comprehensive performance dashboard, it'll also drive the work that we're going to be doing future forward in our strategic plan for ISD 361, and it'll provide us a significant amount of metrics so we have appropriate goal setting for the district versus shooting off the cuff. It'll be district-wide. It'll be an operation for pre-K through 12th grade, and it will drive both short and long-term goals for the administrative team, the leadership team, the school board, and the district as a whole. The launch date for the dashboard portion only will be January 19th, which is one of our professional development days that we come back to, and it will be introduced to our staff at that time. The principals and I will work on it during the month of January, so we can take a look. We'll go through a training so we can see how it works, but it's actually being built from the ground based on the research that they're doing with MDE. So that being said, the consultant that we're going to be working with will also be partnering with Teamwork, so they work in tandem so we can drive our goals for the district in the future collaboratively. Next, I just want to talk to you a little bit about one of the areas of the strategic plan, in addition to what we heard tonight in the audit and in the finance presentation. We can continue to see a downward trend in student enrollment, and we continue to see a high number of students that are not attending ISD 361. And when you look at those numbers, it equates to over $1 million. It's a significant amount of money. Wow. So one of the things that we talk about as an administrative team, and we've talked about it as a school board, is how are we investing our dollars to try and service these families who opt not to have their children served by ISD 361. And we do know, again, and I know sometimes I sound like a broken record, but this is, in my professional opinion, one of the most pivotal areas outside of the aging infrastructure that we have got to address, and we have to address it at a higher level. And the administrators and I are all on the same page in this, and so we have to look at how we deliver education differently in addition to what we're offering our students. So when we talk about the CTE expenditures going up, that is because more kids want to access our CTE programming. So again, when we talk about trimesters, if a child has to choose between SHOP 2 and band, that equates to a child maybe not having the opportunity to have a pathway towards a CTE program. Mm-hmm. So that being said, if we offer trimesters, they might be able to have 3 different options, or if we look at maybe there is a cap and we can only offer up to SHOP 2 because we don't have the staff, we don't have the accessibility for hours. That can change when we look at a trimester schedule, because then there might be 3 different options, or maybe they do have an option to take a SHOP 3 mm-hmm. or a photography 1, 2, and 3. So it's really about creating unique ideas that, again, like Member Corby talks about, what if they find that niche for them? So we have to really be creative, and that is one way that we talked about aligning that to our strategic plan. Principal Tate talked a little bit about this tonight. One of the things that we have to do differently is how we educate and market to our families. So we've talked about some creative solutions and what that could look like as a school district, and we have talked about a comprehensive opportunity for families and community members to come in on a Saturday where we do have staff, where we do have school board members, and we're doing actual live in-person presentations so people know where we're going.
Oh, that's a
So
good idea.
that is something we're actually in conversation about right now. The other area that we have to continue to work through is we are part of, the district has always been a part of the county truancy team. And one of the things that we are taking very seriously is really assessing the data of what our trends and patterns look like in student attendance and tardiness. So Principal Tate and Principal West are now active participants in the county truancy team. So we've changed that trajectory a little bit because I think we have to have our administrators at the table because they're ultimately the ones that can push the envelope, educate on what's happening in our school, what patterns they're seeing with some of our students and families. So then when those families come in and work with the county truancy team, they're at the table so they can share that story about education. So whatever they develop in a solution, then our administrators are there and they're part of that story. So that is in addition to how we're tackling some of our attendance and truancy issues. Our district attendance teams have been phenomenal in collecting data, communicating with families, whether it's letters, postcards. We're still tweaking our phone system with our new Infinite Campus. But we're also, and you know this is something I repeat myself over and over, and this is why this performance dashboard is so important. Again, our MCA data is a direct correlation to our student attendance. And so when we can look at that side by sides, when we're working with our families and are working with our community, we're talking about those things in tandem. And again, you're going to see that reflected in our dashboard that's being creative. And those are key indicators of the student outcomes. That doesn't mean we're going to ignore rigorous learning experiences in the classroom. It doesn't mean we're going to dip out of explicit instruction. We're going to continue to invest in that work, but we have to also continue to address the variables that are contributing to poor performance or areas of deficit.
Beth, have you had the opportunity to do any kind of trending on the attendance stuff yet, or it's still too early?
I'm still working with families, but what I'm seeing is, and this is an area that we have got to invest more time, is our online campus. It feels like every other week there are students that are either coming back to school from online learning or they're exiting because they have the flexibility of an online schedule. So the principals and I have talked significantly about what that could look like. Though we do have a baseline of online classes now, it needs to be more rigorous, and we need to be able to provide a very comprehensive online learning experience. So the principals we have a team, kind of a research team that we're working with. We're talking to different frameworks and what their curriculum looks like. Principal Tate and I have met with a principal that leads an online school. She has actual classroom teachers, and she is the sole principal of that school. So one of the things that we know is that is probably, in my opinion, outside of homeschool, our biggest barrier is the online access because of the flexibility. We've also talked about creating a hybrid schedule where kids could do both. They could be in school and taken online. And though we offer that now, we know we want it at a higher level in what it looks like. So we're doing some research on what that could look like. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Somewhat? Okay. The next thing that we are looking at is the technology director for the district and I are meeting and just really looking at how can we create a comprehensive technology plan for the district and what that looks like in how many devices do we want, what do we want our technology and student use to look like in the future. Do we want to be a one-to-one district? Do we want to have Chromebook carts in the classroom? We have to develop a budget in addition to what happens when our technology is broken or misused. So we're creating that. Hopefully that will be rolled out for the next school year because we really don't have a comprehensive data hub that we can monitor what that's going to look like.
Have you seen some of the newer studies that have come out with regards to all these districts that went to one-to-one where the kids have Chromebooks or iPads and their reading scores have gone down.
Yeah.
So they've gone back to books.
And I would say that's something the principals and I are talking about quite intentionally is we have got to get back to some of the basic components of education in addition to what is technology, what do the technology policies look like in our district. And I think you'll see International Falls School District move to the Away for the Day tech use next year, and that although it will look different for our juniors and seniors, it's really about cell phones are not out during the school day. We're seeing a lot of research on what it does for mental health, what it does for anxiety, and I just released a statement to our high school families regarding some of the new apps that are out there. They're very concerning. Technology is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
There are some new apps out there that are harmful to our young people. And we just will not have that in the school district here. So we're being very intentional about that work.
Beth, may I say that it's so interesting to see the way when we go to our annual conference every year for the school board that some years you have them present on how important it is to get to be a very high-level technology school to present to all of our kids so that we are right up there with the rest, competing with the other schools. And then we hear the opposite information. It's really tough to make good decisions.
It is, and sometimes you hear it, what's the new fad? You know, and I think there's a time and place for technology. We would love to eventually find enough funding to make this space, our media center, into an innovation center where we have, you know, additional areas for kids to work online. We have a 3D printer. We have, you know, CAD drawing opportunities, podcasting centers, but also we have to make sure that that human connection and that project-based learning is happening in our classrooms. And so I think that's part of the work that they're actually doing in explicit instruction is really making sure that learning, that hands-on learning is happening in our classrooms. So it's something we're revisiting quite frequently, and I think the research speaks for itself behind it. So as you know, and I think there'll be a brief update on our committees tonight, we are in negotiations with all of our bargaining units right now. We've recently come up with a tentative agreement with Local 331. We'll continue to have upcoming meetings in January with the remaining bargaining units, and we will work through our financial projections. And CISO has provided projections for us, what we have to work with, but that doesn't mean there couldn't be some possible cuts. Because when we start looking at where the expenditures are versus the revenue, we have to really assess, though we know that we're going to move through the negotiations, there may have to be, and ultimately there will be, some cuts that will be coming up at the end of the year. I met with CISO today. Though we are in a good position compared to some of the rest of our school districts across Minnesota, there's just some areas that the principals and I have to take a deeper dive into and look at for spending. Grant update, I can't give you all the details tonight, but in the last week I have received 3 calls that the school district is going to be recipients of 3 grants that will be announced in January. We can't give the names right now, but they relate to about $140,000. And Linnea sent me a message tonight. She's got 6 very large grants out there that will be, the answers will be coming to us in January, February, and March. I can tell you that Linnea is working very hard at finding different modes of funding streams for our school district. One of the grants that I do know we just received a smaller grant, and that is going to start putting new water stations in our school district. So we're going to start continuing to build on that, and they're supported behind taking lead out of our schools. So it's really a wonderful thing. Last but not least, 2 things, childcare. Molly and I put out a survey to our community on childcare who would be interested. Right now, the biggest area of interest for families is after-school childcare. So we are just starting to look at, we have about 35 to 40 families that are interested in after-school childcare by our district. So we're starting to talk about what that could look like, talk about what wages could look like, how many staff we need to hire. Molly has been working with Rachel Omdahl out of Bemidji because she runs a highly effective program down there. We're talking to other area after-school childcare. There is interest in a summer program, but right now we're focused on after school.
The after-school program, are you looking at a time frame like till 5 or 6 or?
Right now, we're looking at about 5:30, but it could be extended to 6, but the time constraints that we're really looking at, the data is 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
We have we're gonna have 2 meetings in January. The first one, which always happens for school board meetings, is the organizational meeting. That will be held on January 5th at 5:15 p.m. That is where we will look at officers, we'll set the calendar for the year in addition to revisit our committees, and we'll have an update on negotiations at that time. Last but not least, if you have not walked around our schools as school district board members, please do so. It's the second annual Winter Wonderland Tour. The kids and staff will be out voting on Thursday. It's quite fantastic to see what some of the teachers and program leaders have done to their hallways and doors. A lot of them are educational, and I really encourage you to take a walk around as board members in both schools over the course of the next week. It's fantastic. Unless you have any questions, that's it.
I do. I couldn't quite jump in about the dashboards. Do you think that most districts across the state are going to be having dashboards, or are we going to be somewhat unique, or?
The districts that I have worked with all have dashboards. It's something that I would like to see implemented here as a school district so we can start following the data of ISD 361. I think it's really important. It helps us drive our decision making. Good decision making comes with good data.
So you don't know if it's like 50% or?
I don't.
Okay.
All I know is that the districts that I've worked with over the course of the last 10 years, I have not seen a district in Minnesota that does not have one. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but the districts that I've worked with do have them.
Thanks.
Okay. Policy committee, I'm gonna schedule a meeting probably in the next couple weeks on break that maybe Beth can come to, and we can sit down for a little while and just review where we're at, policies and all of that stuff. Athletic committee.
There's no update on my end. Our next meeting is on Thursday, so we haven't met since the last board meeting.
Legislative committee.
Yeah, there were 36 resolutions that were submitted either by individual schools or schools that combined with other schools that submitted to the state of Minnesota to the MSBA to support legislation. And MSBA has not yet compiled it and does not want it shared yet, but I would assume within a week we're going to hear. Those resolutions were extremely interesting. They had a book this big that they sent me. Very interesting stuff. So hopefully there'll be more to report next meeting.
Thank you. All right. Anything else, anybody to report? All right. We'll move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll motion.
Motion by Tina.
I'll second.
Second by Rox. Any discussion?
Can I just add on number 5 that we need to change the effective date to 1/1/2026?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I just have one thing to ask about. I don't know if it's more of a statement or a question, but I look every board meeting. I look at our payables, right, and what we're paying out for different things, and maybe it's being nitpicky or whatever, but it just seems like we're spending a lot of money on little things like Amazon. We're ordering a lot of stuff from Amazon, which probably is appropriate, but there was hair ties and the other kind of stuff in there that I don't understand why we're buying that stuff.
Yeah, I can tell you why.
Okay, good.
And the principals, if you want to jump in, go ahead. So a lot of the things that you are seeing purchased from Amazon, a lot of that outside of if we need ink cartridge or miscellaneous things in the school are for either funded from our Falls Education Foundation grants.
Okay.
A lot of our Falls Education Foundation grants are coming through Amazon.
Okay.
We have to submit.
That's what I was wondering.
Yep, we have to submit a copy of what the purchase could look like. And so a lot of the little things, like when you see hair ties, or you see, what's another fun thing in the school store?
There's like
Slime,
markers,
markers,
yeah.
those kinds of things. That's school store. So that is PBIS.
Okay.
So students have to earn a reward,
Okay.
and then they get to spend their money on something from the school store.
Yes.
So when you see hair ties or bouncy balls, that would be elementary, where the high school might be markers and notebooks. And so
Stuff
that,
in the fax room I saw too.
yes,
Yeah.
they're not for classroom teachers. They are for supplies for school stores and PBIS.
Excellent, thank you.
Does that
totally-
help?
Totally answers.
And you know what,
my question.
that is a great question, because even when I arrived, there were some things that I asked questions about, right?
Mhm.
And I think you have to educate yourself and get informed, so
Yeah.
ask.
For sure.
Anything else?
Excuse me. I just have a question about the ATM. So we get all the fees?
Great question. So I wish Tim was here. So a lot of the public areas that you go to for athletics and activities, they have ATMs in them.
Yeah.
So a gentleman who works with either Rosal or War Road purchased company, and War Road, here it is, Paul. And they offered to put in ATMs into Bronco Arena and Falls High School for basketball and hockey events, and there will be no cost to the district. We get approximately 50 cents for every outtake of money. So the reimbursement is really that portion of it, because if you go and take money out, like if you go to a Walmart or a Target, there's always a fee, a gas station.
Yeah,
there's
right.
like $1.50 fee. That's how they pay for themselves. So the district will not incur any expenses. We will get a kickback that will go back to athletics and activities.
Oh, good.
With each purchase.
So it's always athletics that gets the kickback?
Athletics and activities.
Oh, okay.
So we're not getting the entire fee, we're just getting a portion.
Portion, yep, a percentage
Makes
of it.
sense. Okay.
It is one thing, it's my understanding that board has discussed it in prior years, in addition to, it is something we get asked for almost every event by an out of town
Oh, I bet.
guest, is
Yeah.
where's the ATM?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just gotta make sure they fill it up with money.
That Chuckle Puck money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I have motion by Tina and a second by Rox to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move on to action items. Improving systems and structures to create a culture where all are welcome and supported. Resolution for acceptance of gifts and donations, whereas School Board Policy 706 establishes the guidelines for the acceptance of gifts or donations to the district, whereas the International Falls School District Board encourages the support of the district's educational programs through gifts or donations that meet the goals and objectives of the school district. Whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 states the school board may accept a gift, grant, or devise of real or personal property only by the adoption of a resolution approved by 2/3 of its members. Therefore, be it resolved, the School Board of International Falls Public Schools ISD number 361 accepts with appreciation the following gifts, donations, or grants received by the school district. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Jess and second by Tina. William and Marlene Wagner Industrial Arts donation in memory of Douglas Bowman, $20. Elizabeth and Dean Christensen FHS donation in memory of Douglas Bowman, $25. Pauline Costley Walls FHS and FES donation in memory of Doris and Gail Costley, $500. Shannon's Incorporated 6th grade field trip, $100. PCA 6th grade field trip, $2,500. J&D Novak FES music program donation, $100. Bronco Golf Boosters, a golf simulation, $489.25. Jared and Beth Shimon, nurse's office, microwave, winner student athletic registration fee scholarship to ISD 361, $65. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereupon the resolution was declared adopted.
May I interject? I missed this number 13 right before the action items. I really think we should probably thank Seth Edestead for all of his work that he's done with the football team, and I didn't remember to say that before.
Sure. All right. And then 1B, approve the 25-26 FES student handbook. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, go ahead, Tony. I'll
Okay.
second.
Discussion?
So I was comparing the old one to the new one, and there's just a few, I mean, it's pretty similar, wouldn't you say? There was just some things like, that came out, like playground play, snow play. Is that stuff like that was purposely omitted just because of the, like, responsible, safe, like all of that already being taught? Or, I just was curious as to why it was coming out.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and there was some repetitive language, and I felt it was important to just compare and just scale it down.
Okay.
So if things were repetitive, I tried to just be a little more concise.
Perfect. I just wasn't sure if anything needed to be posted somewhere with the snow chunks, ice chunks, all that, so. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, a motion by Tony and second by Jess to approve the 25-26 FES student handbook. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 1C, approve the 26-27 and 27-28 ISD 361 trimester schedule.
I'd be happy to make that motion.
And I'll second.
So before you vote, I would just, I met with the teacher union chair, Mr. Anderson, and he and I have discussed, on Principal Tate, we talked about really starting a baseline pilot, so it'd be a 2-year MOU, and then at the end of 2 years, we would revisit what has really gone well and if there were any barriers.
Yeah.
Love that. Perfect.
And we can discuss early out date.
I will bring that up.
All right, a motion by Roxanne, second by Jessica to approve the 26-27, 27-28 ISD 361 trimester schedule. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, and we already did that. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Rox and second by Tina to adjourn the meeting at 7:11 p.m. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.